G'day folks and welcome to an Oz Cyclone Chasers Cyclone video update tonight, the 20th of March 2015. My name's Chris Nitzo. This update sponsored by our major sponsor, Campbell Scientific Australia, when measurements matter. Well, it's been a tough couple of days for the OCC team. We've travelled from Darwin and Townsville and Mackay through to Cooktown. We've seen probably what we would say is Category 1 level intensity winds, with wind gusts that we estimate on the surface at about 100 kilometres an hour. Our weather station did pick up a 3-second maximum of 124 kilometres per hour, but our weather station was positioned up about 180 metres above sea level. The reason we did position our weather station up that high was because JCU had a number of weather stations on the surface level, and we wanted to see what the difference is between what they recorded and what we recorded. So we will share that data with them, and we'll have a look at what data they got, and we'll see the difference that 180 metres of elevation could make in the significant changes in the wind strengths between the two levels. So Tropical Cyclone Nathan ended up making landfall was a Category 4 initially, and then downgraded to a Category 3 reasonably quickly upon landfall. And we see that the system, you can see here where we were, Cooktown, just on the edge there of the destructive band as it went through, and we really only experienced Category 1 level intensity winds. Now, the OBS at Cape Flattery, and we didn't get OBS from Lizard Island, but the eye passed right over the top of Lizard Island. The observations from Cape Flattery suggested wind gusts of up to about 150 odd kilometres per hour, with a minimum pressure of 990 hectopascals. Now, that becomes a bit of an issue, because had the system been as predicted a Category 4, we would have expected and anticipated wind gusts that were a lot stronger than that, and we would have anticipated a pressure a lot lower than that. So I dare say that the Bureau of Meteorology will be post-analysing this event quite rigorously, and don't be surprised if the cyclone may be downgraded in the future based on their post-analysis. But I'm not here to speculate on that. All I'm here to tell you is what the data showed. If we take a look at Cyclone Nathan, he basically tracked directly west all the way onto the coast. You can see here Cape Flattery is right there, located right on that southwestern edge eye wall. The eye almost touched them, but just didn't quite make it. Probably around about 10 kilometres away from the eye, just to the south of it. And as I mentioned, the highest recorded wind there around that 150 kilometre an hour mark, and then we also had the minimum pressure around that 990 hectopascals. Really, for a place that was within 10 k's of the eye, you would have expected to see a slightly stronger observations than that. But you can see here Lizard Island passed straight over the middle, so it'll be interesting to see if Lizard Island allow photos to be taken. Lizard Island is privately owned, so if they do allow photos to be taken, they might help to assist in gathering enough data to say what the sort of intensity of this system was. Alright, that's enough about what Cyclone Nathan did. Let's talk about what Cyclone Nathan will or may do. Alrighty, issued at 6 p.m. today, we've got Tropical Cyclone Nathan Category 1 intensity system is now tracking in a west-northwesterly direction, expected to do so for for at least the next 2 days or so. Expecting to push off the coast here overnight tonight or early tomorrow morning around Cape Kiawea as a very weak Category 1 system, and then possibly begin to increase both in size and intensity as it tracks west-northwest across the Gulf. If we take a look at the NT track map, we can see that the system is then expected to continue tracking in a west-northwest direction around about March the 22nd, which is on the Sunday. And Monday, it is expected to impact the northeast Arnhem district between Groote Island and Nhulunbuy, and then continue out in a west to west-northwesterly direction, and may also impact places like Elcho Island and eventually in the longer term Maningrida. It is then expected to continue to track west indefinitely at this stage, and possibly impact Darwin in terms of increased wind, rain and rain and slightly less comfortable weather conditions. Bureau of Meteorology and their technical outlook show that there's talk about a rapid intensification of this system once it pushes back out into the Gulf under fairly limited levels of vertical wind shear and very warm ocean sea surface temperatures. So the combination of those two will result in a lot of energy being available to the system and the possibility of a fairly rapid intensification. Let's take a look at some of the computer model forecasts here from the Euro and the GFS. We'll compare them and talk about their future tracks of this system. Alrighty, just a side-by-side comparison here. We're not going to go into too much detail tonight. For subscribers tomorrow morning, we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail as to the steering mechanisms and the possibility for rapid intensification. But for now, let's just continue tracking this system. As we go to Saturday morning at 10 a.m, we can see the system is now in the Gulf of Carpentaria, Category 1, possibly nudging Category 2 already by Saturday morning. But I think that might be a little bit enthusiastic from the model guidance, if you like. But as we go into Saturday night, we can see that this system is more likely to have become a Category 2 then. We've got wind speeds sustained at 40 to 50 knots across the southwestern quadrant of the system. This is something that has been quite prevalent here for Tropical Cyclone Nathan for the past couple of days, is that southwestern quadrant, or that southwest eye wall area, being its most intense region of wind and rain and thunderstorm activity, which further makes the observations from Cape Flattery quite interesting in the fact that they were so low, because you would have expected that the southwestern eye wall is going to be the strongest part of the system. Alright, now as we continue tracking further to the west and further into time, we've got here Sunday morning around about 4 a.m. the system is approaching the northeast Arnhem district from the east-southeast towards the west-northwest. And you can see here it sort of hits in the middle of no man's land between Gove and Aliangula, and then continues in a west-northwesterly direction and passes very, very close to Elcho Island. Of course, Elcho Island, for those of you that have been following, have been smashed by Tropical Cyclone Lam a few weeks ago and are still trying to recover from that. So even though this is going to be a very weak cyclone, if not a tropical low by the time it gets over them, it's still an uncomfortable weather situation for them, especially coming so close and so hot on the heels of something so devastating as Tropical Cyclone Lam. As we continue through to Sunday night, you can see the system continues to fairly rapidly move in a west-northwesterly direction, lying off the coast of about Maningrida there by Sunday night. And then if we continue tracking it further, we can see it gets into the Arafura Sea. If it can get clear of land masses there in the Arafura Sea, it might start to do something like intensify again. And then continue to track. You can see it just on the edge of your screen here as we go through to Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening, passing right over the top of or just to the north of the Coburg, and then over the top of the Tiwi Islands, which will make life a little bit uncomfortable for anyone in Darwin, of course, because you're looking at 25 to 30 knots sustained wind speeds, and that's if the system isn't a cyclone. If the system is a cyclone, you might see winds and rain that might be a little bit more significant than what is being shown at the moment. Alright, as we continue through to Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, you can see that the system starts to adopt a more southerly motion here, fairly close to the coast, and unless it can get back offshore, it would be limited in its further intensification potential. Okay, as we go to the GFS forecast model here and we look ahead and we see that the system tracks in a very similar direction, so we have a very high degree of confidence on the forecast track of this system. The GFS forecast model does have the system trending just a little bit south, a little closer to Aliangula than it does towards Nhulunbuy, but really it's going to be touch and go for either area. Now, the best case scenario obviously for both regions is for the system to track just in between them, as per the Euro, as per, in a way, the GFS, although the GFS, you can see slightly stronger winds expected to affect Aliangula and Groote Island there on the Sunday morning. Now, the system on the GFS forecast model continues to track further to the west-northwest, once again making life a little bit uncomfortable for the residents of Elcho Island, but certainly nothing to compare with Tropical Cyclone Lam, definitely. We can see here that the system then pushes just offshore, off Maningrida, and may intensify fairly rapidly if it does push offshore, but for only a very short and brief period of time before it starts to be impacted by land again. Now, if we continue to track this system further to the north here, and obviously for our Darwin residents, that is what you're most interested in. As we go towards Monday night, you can see the system lying north of the Coburg and then north of the Tiwis on Tuesday morning. However, what we'd also start to see on Tuesday morning is that the system may move a little bit further to the south. Now, this is where the models vary and diverge. You've got the European, which pushes the system into this area, same area as the GFS, but the Euro dips it southwards towards Darwin. The GFS forecast model continues to move it west-southwestwards towards the Southeast Timor Sea, and then the Southeast Indian Ocean after that. Interestingly, when we look at the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre track forecast, not so much the track forecast that's interesting, it's more so the intensity forecast. If you notice here, the JTWC has it intensifying to a 75 to 80 knot system just before landfall here around Nhulunbuy, and then have it further intensifying into an 80 plus knot system just before making landfall around the Maningrida, or just to the west of Maningrida. So very interesting scenario here by the JTWC, where they don't expect it to be impacted by land as much here in the northeast Arnhem District. They expect a slightly more northerly motion of the system, and therefore becoming a little bit more intense, having that opportunity to become more intense before finally making a landfall here near the Point Stewart, or right on the base of the Coburg Peninsula, and then tracking just inland of Darwin. Obviously, if it tracks just inland of Darwin, we'll probably see some fairly intense rainfall right over the top of Darwin, because we'll have a lot of convergence occurring in that situation. So obviously, with a lot of onshore winds coming in at the system, we should see more rainfall in the Darwin area from it. We take a look at the Euro strike probabilities here. We can see that the system on the Euro travels right over the top of Gove, and that, I think, is a key influence in the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre's track forecast for the system, is that the fact that the Euro ensemble and overall the Euro is tipping it moving west-northwest to be lying right over the top of Gove, and as a fairly intense system, the Euro has it intensifying to at least a moderate Category 2, if not slightly higher into the high-end Category 2 range. Now you can see here the Euro does jut it a little bit further to the north and a little bit further to the west, and so we've got a situation where it lies just off the Darwin coast here in a few days' time, and then continues tracking out here to the west-southwest towards the Southeast Indian Ocean. And now what it does after that, well, we'll have to tune in and find out. But at this stage, it's tracking west-southwest out to about days 8 and 9, and whether or not it can re-intensify out here in the Southeast Indian Ocean remains to be seen. Very, very similar forecast from the GFS forecast ensemble here, straight over the top of Gove. So it looks like, at the moment, the computer models have trended a lot further to the north in the last 24 hours for this system, and have got it making a direct hit on that Gove Peninsula. Whether it actually directly hits Nhulunbuy, remembering, of course, that Nhulunbuy is about 15 kilometres or so north of Gove, but really, in the end, it'll be quite interesting to see whether we can see a direct hit on Nhulunbuy. And then continues to the west here on the GFS forecast model, just offshore, and heads towards Maningrida and the Coburg, the base of the Coburg. The CMC computer model has done extremely well with Tropical Cyclone Nathan so far. It was one of the only computer models that was suggesting that Nathan will not move south, like all of the other major players were doing. The CMC model is certainly one that is not up there in terms of accuracy overall, but it has picked this system extremely well so far. The CMC computer model has the system dragging out here to the west-northwest, straight over the top of the Gove Peninsula again. So we've got 3 out of 3 that I've shown you here in the ensemble guidances that have picked this going straight over the top of Gove at between Category 2 and Category 3 intensity levels. So it's going to be a very interesting 24 to 48 hours for Gove. For our subscribers, we've got a fair few from Gove. We'll have another update for you in the morning to tell you how that's progressing. And for the general public, we'll have another update for you tomorrow night on Tropical Cyclone Nathan, including what sort of impacts could be experienced both in terms of wind and rain on the coastline of northeast Arnhem tomorrow. Thanks for watching this update, folks, and we'll have another one for you, as I mentioned. Subscribers tomorrow morning, general public tomorrow night.